What's going on, YouTube? Today, I'm going to take you guys through a full high volume upper body day for a bodybuilder that's 7 weeks out from competition. So at the time of filming this clip, it's actually March 12th, 2004. It's Tuesday. It's the day that I'm going to upload this video. But the workout is actually from Saturday, or the 9th, because I drove into my old city, Mississauga, for my boy Daniel's wedding. Congratulations to Daniel and Emily, if you guys ever watched this video. It was a beautiful ceremony. I'm super happy for you guys. But needless to say, it's a 3-hour drive from my town back into my old city. So I stacked my day because I like to maximize my time whenever I travel. That being said, I linked up with my athlete, Samuel, who is actually 7 weeks out from his first natural bodybuilding competition. And I vlogged the whole workout. I have to say that it was quite intensive. Mind you, I programmed it. But it's just, it's very different where Samuel's at right now versus where I'm at. He's pretty much 7 months into his prep, and I'm, at the beginning of a mini cut. So that amount of volume left me wrecked. Like, I'm still pretty sore right now. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I'm going to run through a couple of clips going into town, and then I'm actually going to break down every single exercise that we do during the workout. And we did a little bit of posing practice after. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Let's get it. Damn, bro, this is like my old stomping ground. I used to train at this gym regularly, so pretty cool to be back. Okay, so first things first, before every single workout, I always do some form of stretching mobility or soft tissue work with the foam roller and lacrosse ball like I'm doing here. Now, you might be wondering, why is he going into his hips and his glutes if he's going to do an upper body day? Well, you use your legs for everything, okay? And I find that the older I've gotten, the tighter my hips have become, and it just restricts me across the board. Then I went into my lats, which is typically another troubled area for most people. A lot of tension, a lot of restriction. So I spent some time opening up my lats. It's usually very painful. Like, I'm a little bit more accustomed to it now. I've been doing it for so long. But when you first start out, maybe use a softer foam roller, or just go easy. Give yourself some grace. And for the first movement, we actually went into a chest-supported underhand row, or low row, whatever you want to call it. And because we didn't actually do any sort of real warm-up, like an activator movement, we started off with a warm-up set. Okay, so this isn't going to count towards the actual set scheme that I had laid out for Samuel, but you can see that I am actually rounding forward as I'm dropping the weight or lowering the weight. And the reason I'm doing that is to actually get a full stretch out of my lats. And you can see Samuel doing the same thing, getting a nice deep stretch out of the lats on the negative portion of the actual movement. But even with him, he's not rounding forward as much. Mind you, he's a lot taller than me, so he gets a little bit more kind of like reach out of this versus me, because I'm short, right? So for me to fully stretch, I do round forward from the top a little bit. It's not necessarily something that I'll recommend to someone who's, newer to training, like a newer trainee. But if you are intermediate or advanced, then it might be something you want to actually implement into your rows, specifically chest supported rows. So our first working set was at 100 pounds, okay? Now, whenever I go into actual heavy sets, again, I have shorter arms, so I usually load up the weight one arm at a time. And you can see I'm still rounding forward at the bottom of the movement. And then as I roll back, I'm kind of like slightly arching back, okay? But the key here is to not allow your sternum or your chest to fully come off of the pad. And so the reason I like to arch back slightly at the top of the row is to fully contract my lower lats. And actually throughout this clip, I end up cueing Samuel on fully engaging his lower lats. Okay, like I give him a little bit of a tactile cue here to fully engage his lower lats, then he implements that squeeze at the top.
How does this guy fit through doors?
So we did 3 working sets of 10 to 12 reps for this specific movement. And honestly, the chest supported low row is one of my favorites when it comes to lat development, specifically lower lats. And for the second exercise, we went into a landmine row or T-bar row, depending on what you like to call it. I already hit my first set. This is Samuel's first set. We started off relatively light because we had 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps here. So what you're seeing right now is just 50 pounds. And afterwards, for our second set, we tacked on another 50 pounds, which I almost lost my toe bringing over to the bar. Be careful, guys. Please practice safe sets. And when you're carrying your weights to your bar, just be mindful, okay? We don't want you to lose the toe. Anyways, when it comes to a landmine row, one of the most important things is how you actually load the weight, like how you pick it up. You do not want to have a candy cane spine, I like to call, okay? You want to keep a nice hip hinge. And if you noticed, I actually deadlifted the weight up and then I fell forward into row position. And the tarps came off for Samuel's second set because my boy shredded AF. But you can see he also deadlifts the weight up, okay, with really good form in his hip hinge before he proceeds to hinge back forward into his row position. Also notice that we opted in for 25-pound weights instead of 45-pound weights, just so we could get a full range of motion out of the movement. And honestly, that angle did not give Samuel's physique justice, so I had to pop in an iPhone clip just to show you guys how shredded my boy really is. But anyways, for our last set, we went up to 125 pounds. Now, we probably could have went heavier, but we wanted to play it a little smart because we knew we still had quite a bit of volume to do at this point. So for the third exercise, we did cable Y raises. Now, this exercise is actually a rehab exercise. I learned this in rehab when I jacked up my rotator cuff, okay? So typically, you'll see this in like a rehab program, but it's also a great way to actually work your rear delts, okay? Now, I was actually breaking down the form for Samuel in between sets and explaining to him that this specific exercise isn't about weight, okay? It's more about keeping proper form and activating the right muscles, right? Because more often than not, we tend to lift with our egos and, we think that the only way to progress is by adding more weight, which is far from the truth. So essentially what you're thinking of doing with the cable Y raise, it's pretty much like a variation of full cans. If you've ever done that exercise in rehab, what you're thinking of doing is keeping your rib cage tucked and your core super tight, okay? Shoulder blades retracted. And then you're thinking of raising the weight with your elbows, okay? Like obviously you have your hands holding the cables, but when you're actually going to raise into that Y position, you're thinking of raising with your elbows, okay? And you're trying to keep your upper traps out of the picture as much as possible. Don't get me wrong, you are going to stimulate and activate your upper traps, but the objective here is to try and get your rear delts or your rear shoulders to activate first and take the lunk of the weight. So for the cable Y raises, we did 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps. Then we moved over to a simple cable fly, okay? A low to high or an incline chest cable fly. I like using this machine that Good Life has. It has the arms where they go up and down and side to side, and you can kind of adjust it to your liking. But when it comes to cable flies, I think I actually broke this down in my push day video. The main things you want to think of here is actually keeping your shoulder blades retracted and depressed, and then maintaining a constant bend in your arms. Like, you don't want the bend to fluctuate as you're flying, because then a lot of the times it'll end up going into kind of like your biceps, right? So maintaining a constant bend in your arms and using your chest, okay? Because what tends to happen with a lot of people when they're doing flies is they'll round forward, because again, they're trying to tack on too much weight and they can't keep form rather. And so they end up rounding forward and using more of their shoulders. So instead, scale the weight back, focus on keeping your form in check. And then of course, think of where your muscle fibers of your chest actually run. And then when you're doing the flies, keep that in mind and try to keep the movement pattern in alignment with the direction of the muscle fibers. So for this exercise, we did 3 sets of 15 to 20 reps. Then right after the flies, I actually programmed renegade rows into Samuel's program, just to add a component of like core stability and a dynamic exercise to his prep. Now, Samuel is a lot taller than me, okay? And our training is very different, because like my goal is not getting completely shredded as of right now, okay? And it's been a lot of core stability work and a lot of conditioning. But needless to say, with, all of those factors in mind, this exercise was actually very difficult for Samuel to perform. So we added a substitution in for Samuel, which I ended up actually doing as well, because these are really, really hard. We added a superset of alternating dumbbell rows and shoulder taps, okay? Now, I changed this in Samuel's programming across the board, because I just wanted to try and see if he could actually do the renegade rows. But I think there's something to be said about being able to kind of substitute things, whether it's a progression or a regression on the fly, because you never know what can happen throughout your program or how you're going to be feeling on any given day. And that being said, it should never be a thing to be ashamed of if you have to alternate or substitute for something else, because the whole point of training is to get better, okay? And if that means scaling things back a little bit, then that's what you got to do. So for our 6th exercise, well, technically our 7th, because we ended up doing a superset for the last exercise. But yeah, so for our 7th exercise, we did a single arm lat pull down, okay? And I absolutely love this exercise because it's really easy. Well, it's easier to focus on lat engagement, okay, when you're doing things unilaterally or like single limb work, right? And this doesn't just serve for upper body. This is a principle that definitely serves your lower body as well. I always recommend that regardless if you're a new trainee, an intermediate trainee, or an advanced trainee, single limb work or unilateral work is honestly imperative for building strength and muscle. And this exercise specifically, it's always been a staple in my training, and every single one of my clients has this included at some point in time in their training program. So whenever you're doing single arm lat pull downs, or any lat pull downs for that matter, you want to think of a few things here. Number one, keeping good posture, okay? So you don't want to round forward. You actually want to keep like the slightest arch in your mid back. I find that helps to get a full stretch out of the lat, which is actually number 2, okay? You want to get a full stretch out of the lat without shrugging. I find that when you go into a shrugged position at the top of the lat pull down, what tends to happen is the traps will fire off. They'll fire off a lot and kind of take over the movement, or take away from your lat activation rather. Now, this is another reason why unilateral work is so important, okay? Because we all have imbalances, And naturally, you will always have imbalances. It's almost like impossible to be 100% balanced across the board. But doing unilateral work will not only give you an awareness of like which side the imbalance is occurring, but it'll also help you to strengthen each side individually and kind of, bring up those skill bars equally, if that makes sense. Now, the last thing is to actually focus on controlling the negative, okay? You do not want to just let the weight drop because that's when usually form will break. For the 8th exercise, we did a pec deck reverse fly. For these, I like to not even use the bench. I find that it's easier for me to find like the right height for me to actually target my rear delts. And it also helps me to kind of round forward. This is one of the only movements that I'll ever suggest somebody to actually round forward with their shoulders. The reason being, if you notice where I'm actually flying to, I'm stopping at 90. Like I'm not going past that point because I'm trying to isolate the rear delt, right? And the further back you go, the more you get your traps and your rhomboids to actually fire off, which is not wrong, right? But if for me personally and for what I programmed for Samuel there, I wanted to specifically target the rear delts, right? And more or less isolate them. So yeah, this is the only exercise that I'll ever tell somebody to actually round forward. But something to keep in mind is that you don't want to set this up too high. Like if you are going to use the bench, you don't want to set it up too high. Even looking at Samuel now, like that I'm running back the footage, he is a touch high because ideally you want those handles to kind of be at the same height as your rear delts. You don't want them to be too high or too low. You want them to be in line with your rear delts so you can effectively hit them. And for the final movement of this workout, we did just a simple cable bicep curl. I actually had machine preacher curls programmed, but this gym was slammed on this Saturday. So we were looking for like variations to hit and like we were both gassed. So we ended up just coming to a simple cable bicep curl. Now, something I like to do whenever I'm doing bicep curls to get like a full stretch out of the bicep is I actually flex my triceps at the bottom, okay? And what that allows me to do is, again, fully stretch the bicep and just stress it out at the bottom there. It'll actually make the movement harder, I'm not gonna lie to you, but that's ultimately the point. And that's actually what I cued Samuel to do as well. And you could really see that at the bottom of each repetition, he's flexing his tricep, getting like a full stretch out of the bicep. So for this exercise, we finished off with 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps. And I forgot to mention, but we did the same sets and reps for the rear delt fly. Okay, so Samuel and I are just wrapping up a push-pull workout from hell. I'm completely gassed. This guy's looking insane. This guy's like Google Maps. But yeah, we just finished the push-pull workout and we're about to get some posing in because Samuel is, how many weeks out are you?
8.
8 weeks out.
We're approaching 7 tomorrow.
So 7 weeks out tomorrow. Technically you're 7 weeks. Damn, we're really close. So we really got to sharpen up his posing. And yeah. I know I've said this a million times, but Samuel is an absolute unit. Like this guy is an anomaly. To give you context, he's been training for, I think like 4 or 5 years, something like that. I will correct myself if I am wrong, like I'll clarify with him after. And he's always been an athlete, okay? Because I know a lot of people might be thinking like, there's no way this guy's natural. But I can assure you that Samuel is 110% a natural athlete. He's never ran any PEDs. This is actually like the first time that he's ever taken it down to this body fat percentage. But yeah, when you see these great physiques, sometimes it can be difficult to like decipher like, did this person run any enhancements like performance enhancing drugs, or are they natural? Like, is this attainable natural? And so I want to give you guys context, like, because I know there's a lot of quote unquote fake natties out there, and the fitness industry is just riddled with a bunch of BS, to be quite frank. But whenever I'm personally assessing, like if, you know, somebody's coming to me to work with me as an athlete and they're claiming to be natural, or if I'm just like, you know, assessing something that I don't know off of social media to like kind of like decipher if they're natty or not, I always look at their progression, right? Like I'll scroll back, years back, to see like, okay, what did they look like 4 years ago? What did they look like last year? And, you know, were they athletes prior? What's their lifestyle look like? What type of training have they been doing? Like, how old are they? There's so many factors that come into play when it comes to developing a great physique, right? And of course, genetics do play a role, but I've said this numerous times on my Instagram, genetics will only play a role once the work has been put in. Like you're not going to be able to see somebody's genetic profile or like how genetically gifted they are if they don't put the work in, right? Like at least past high school, you know what I mean? Like, because Samuel and I are both into our 30s, and now at this point, like, you know, we're grown adults, right? So yeah, I just wanted to provide some context on what you're seeing here, because this guy again is like an A1 athlete. He's been nothing short of amazing to work with. He's super humble, he's hardworking, and he's not afraid to communicate, right? Like when there's something wrong or something of concern or just a question, he's always asking it, and he's always voicing it. And I think that's very important whenever you're choosing to work with a coach, because even for myself personally, like I work with coaches year round, right? And it's communication is hands down one of the most important aspects of the client to coach relationship. But yeah, I'm gonna let you guys enjoy the rest of this posing session, because I think we did make some really good progress with his poses, which by the way is one of the biggest aspects of bodybuilding. Okay, you could be completely shredded, have a crazy physique, but if you can't present it on stage, it really doesn't matter. That concludes the video. Thank you for watching. And as per usual, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Leave me a like if you did like the video. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, because we are 4 out of our 100 video goal, and it's full steam ahead, baby. So I'll see you guys in the next one. But for now, Coach Cruz is logging off. Peace, love, and all the protein. May the gains be with you.